Welcome to this explainer. Today we're jumping right into a super fascinating biblical text. We are going to unpack the incredible story of a man named David, from a time when he was out in the wild, harsh desert of Judah. It's an amazing story about survival, big feelings, and finding comfort in some really unlikely places.
But hey, before we jump right into the story, I want you to picture something. Have you ever been playing outside on a blazing hot summer day? You're sweating, you're super tired, and you are just incredibly thirsty? Imagine that intense feeling of needing a giant, ice-cold drink of water. Hold on to that feeling for a second, because as we explore today's text, you'll see David was feeling that exact same way, but on a whole different level.
Okay, part 1, thirsty in the desert.
So David finds himself in a really tough spot, a dry, sandy wasteland, totally far from home. But notice how he actually describes his situation. There is physical thirst, right? That's your body desperately needing water in a dry land just to survive. But David talks about something even deeper. He talks about a spiritual thirst. He uses that very real, super uncomfortable feeling of being in a dry and parched land where there is absolutely no water to brilliantly show how much his whole being longs for him. He isn't just missing a drink of water, he's missing closeness with him.
Listen to these powerful words right out of the biblical text. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. This shows us David isn't just looking for an oasis or a well out there in the sand. He is earnestly seeking him. And to earnestly seek means you're looking for something with all your heart. You're putting literally all your focus and energy into it.
And here is how he manages to keep his spirits up. Even out in that dry, dusty desert, David remembers the good times. He says, I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. A sanctuary is a holy, safe place of worship. So instead of focusing on all the hot sand and the danger around him, David completely fills his mind with memories of seeing his amazing power and glory back home.
Moving right along to part 2, better than rich foods.
This is wild. David realizes something amazing here. Experiencing his love is actually better and more important than life itself. Think about how huge that is for a second. Out in a dangerous desert where your literal life is on the line, David says his love matters even more than simply staying alive. Because of that, David just can't help but glorify him, which means to loudly praise and honor him with his words. And the biblical text actually lists all the awesome active ways David responds to him. He doesn't just sit there quietly. He glorifies him with his lips. He promised it to praise him as long as he lives. He lifts up his hands in his name, and he praises with singing lips. Have you ever been so happy or so thankful for something that you just wanted to sing out loud or throw your hands straight up in the air? That's exactly what David is doing right in the middle of a desert.
And to really help us understand how that praise makes him feel, David uses a great comparison. Think about the richest of foods. Think of your absolute favorite meal. Maybe it's a huge pizza, a giant burger, or honestly the best ice cream sundae ever. You know that warm, happy, totally filled feeling you get after eating it? Just like how perfectly happy you feel after eating your favorite food, David says praising him leaves him completely and fully satisfied on the inside.
Now, part 3, safe in the shadows. But what happens when the sun goes down? It gets a little scary out in that wild desert, right? Well, the biblical text mentions something called the watches of the night. Back in those days, they obviously didn't have clocks, so they divided the long night into different shifts, or watches, where guards would stay awake to keep everyone safe. The text tells us that David remembers him on his bed and thinks of him through these watches of the night. He finds deep, real comfort when it's pitch dark and he's just trying to get some sleep. This paints such a powerful, beautiful picture. The text says, because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. Have you ever seen a mother bird wrap her big, feathery wings over her tiny baby chicks to keep them warm and protect them from a storm? Because he is David's helper, David feels so incredibly safe that he can literally sing in the dark, exactly like a little baby bird hiding safely in the shadow of its mother's wings. So how does this connection work? It's like a wonderful two-way street. Step 1, David says, I cling to you. Clinging means holding on super tight, kind of like holding on to a parent's hand when you're in a big crowded place. And step 2, in return, David says, your right hand upholds me. As David holds on tight to him, his strong right hand holds David right up so he doesn't trip, stumble, or fall down in the dark.
And finally, part 4, the king rejoices.
Talk about a totally different outcome. There's a massive difference between what happens to the bad guys and what happens to David. The enemies and liars who want to hunt David down and hurt him are stopped in their tracks. The biblical text says they'll be destroyed, go down to the depths, be given to the sword, and be completely silenced. Actually, the text even says they become food for wild jackals. But on the other side, the king, that's David, is kept perfectly safe. He rejoices and glories in him.
Let's look at this really triumphant conclusion. But the king will rejoice in God. All who swear by God will glory in him. Because he perfectly protects his people, David, the king, can stand tall. He can rejoice, which just means showing great joy and happiness, and glory in him, no matter how many enemies are out there sneaking around in that desert.
We've seen exactly how David handled being stuck in a scary, lonely desert. He sought him, remembered his power, and clung tightly to him. So let me leave you with this to think about. You might not be stranded in a real sandy desert today, but when you go through hard days, when you feel like you are in your own dry and parched land, how can you remember him? How can you find your own shelter in the shadow of his wings? Think about that this week. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.